I'm now going to take you through the preparation of a flatfish. So the first thing I've done is weighed the fish so that we can test how much yield we get from it, how much usable fish we have in comparison to how much fish we might not be using. Okay, so this fish is weighing in at 461 grams. Okay, so the fish I'm going to be using today is a lemon sole. Okay, it's just come out of my refrigerator, my fish fridge. It's been stored on ice at 1 to 2 degrees, separate from all other food types. It's nice and firm, so I'm pleased with that. Quickly go through some of the utensils and equipment that I'll be using. On here I have a blue board, which is the designated board to use when working with fish, so that it prevents cross-contamination with other food types. I have my filleting knife here, which is a flexible, very fine knife, very flexible, so that it bends nicely, so that as I'm going along the bone structure of the fish, I can scrape the fish away very cleanly, avoiding waste. I've got a sharpening steel to make sure that also my knife is very sharp, and I have some fish scissors which are used to trim any sort of gills and fins. So I'll give you a little demonstration on that as well. So it's important to keep all your items nice and clean throughout the process. So I've got a sink here so that I can wash up as I go along, and I've also got my preparation trays and waste bowl ready so that I can put the usable pieces of fish on here. I'll put the bones on here, and I'll use this bowl as my waste bowl. Okay, so as I said, I'm just going to make sure that my knife is very sharp. So using my steel, I'm going to give my knife a few runs to make sure that it's nice and sharp. Clean the blade with the sharp part of the blade pointing away from myself. So now we're good to go. So I'm going to take the fish and we'll place it onto our board. It's important to make sure that we utilise as much of the fish as possible, so it's very important that we prepare it as accurately as possible. If this fish was going to be served whole, some people might trim off the tail fin here, like so, just to neaten it up. And for a Dover sole, for example, they may cut away the frill around here, so that the fish has a nice oval shape. So now we're going to start the filleting process. So this fish has a lateral backbone line here, this lateral line here, which gives an indication of where its bone structure is. So I know that there's a bone slightly pointing up here, and then the rest of the bone structure goes across the inside of the centre of the fish like so. So we have 2 fillets on the back of the fish here, with the lateral line there, and 2 fillets on this side of the fish. Unlike a round fish, which will only have 2 fillets, one either side. So making sure my board and area is nice and clean, I'm going to take my knife and we're going to start right round the back of the head, as close to the head as possible, and we're going to cut down the lateral line, holding the fish nice and firm and breaking through the skin all the way down to the tail. And I'm just going to cut across this tail to give me a nice square. So now you can see exactly where I've cut down the back line there, and that gives me the indication of where the 2 fillets will be separated. So once I've done this, I'm just going to go through again, make sure that I can feel the ridge of the back line, and I can hear the knife just going alongside either side of the bone. I'm just going to try and expose it for you. So now I'm going to start to remove the fillet. So using the tip of my knife to start with, just going to run this along the fillet, holding my knife nice and steady in one smooth motion. I don't want to be cutting, I don't want to be making a jagged motion. So nice and smooth, running the knife along the bone structure, horizontal with the fish in nice smooth action like so, so that the fillet is coming neatly away from the fish. We're just going to cut straight through gill area to expose the fillet of the fish with the skin on. So we have a nice smooth fillet of fish, which I'm just going to place onto my tray. And you can see here that there's hardly any, if any at all, flesh left on the bone. So I'm going to repeat the procedure on the other side. So I'm just going to release it from this head area here. There I have my 4 fillets. Now, this still has a lot of flavour, a lot to offer, so I'm not going to throw this away. What I'm simply going to do is just use a general knife. So I'll place this one down, I'll give that a wash in a second. So I'm just going to use a general knife and I'm just going to cut away the head. Okay, and then the rest of this I can just break through the bone structure, and we'll utilise this for making a stock. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is have a good clean down, and then we'll get on with the skinning and the rest of the preparation. Okay, so I've now had a good clean down, made sure everything's nice and clean. I've re-washed my fish, patted it dry. So the next step is to remove the skin from the fillets and just trim off the little frill at the side. That leaves us with 100% meat or flesh from the fish that we can eat. I'm also going to talk to you about a few different cuts as we go along. This is the fillet as it stands now, but there's a few other things that we can do with it, so I'm going to take you through those as well. So, if I take one of the fillets, okay, I'm going to pop it back onto the board, and this time I'm going to take the knife and we're going to just cut slightly into the tail here, and I'm going to hold. If the fish was a little slippy, you might want to hold it with a cloth or a piece of paper. And I'm just going to start by just cutting into the flesh of the fish, onto the skin, so that I've got a small little flip, like so. And as I do that, I'm just going to run along the skin 2 or 3 times, lifting up as I go along to make sure that I'm on task. Lift the flesh up. Point it away, pull the skin back so it's nice and taut, work your way up the fish until you just have the skin and the fillet, like so. Okay, so I'm not going to use this piece of skin, so that can go in with my head over there. And then just to finally finish this one off, I'm just going to trim off these little frills at the side, which come off naturally, like so. Cut that little bit at the end, and that leaves us with a perfect fillet. Okay, which we can pop back onto the board and place the frill in there. So I'm now going to repeat that with the other 3. Now that basically makes the 3 sort of main components of the fish. Really sort of wastage. You could utilise this. Some people might like to eat the roe. It can be fried. Some people might have it for breakfast. Actually very healthy, but not to everybody's taste. And we're going to utilise the bones. But this is the really important bit. So it's really important that we maximise this part of the fish. This is the true value of the fish. This is the thing that people will pay for in the fishmongers, for example. So it's important from gaining as much profit as possible and maximising the use of the dish that we don't have this in the waste bowl. So now we're going to reweigh the fish, the usable part, and compare it to the weight of the original fish. So I'm going to place my tray back onto the and that's coming in at 225 grams, which is quite a bit of loss. But we also have to consider that we've got 2 fairly chunky pieces of roe there. The next thing I'm going to do is take you through some of the cuts and the shapes that we can use with a flatfish. Now, if it was a large flatfish, and if I just pretend that this is a flatfish here, like a turbot, something like that, and we've got the bone structure with its little ridge across there and the bones flattening across there, and we took a large knife and we cut through the bone structures like that into steaks, so we'd have the bone with a piece of meat either side and another piece underneath. That's what's called a tronçon. Now, we can't cut a fish of this size into a tronçon because it's far too small. So it's not possible to do it from a lemon sole, but it would be possible from something like a brill or a turbot. Now, the things we can do with this, obviously, this is a fillet, so we could keep it like this as a whole fillet. We can roll the fillet up, so we could put a line of stuffing along there, and we could take the tail, making sure that we've got the nice flesh side, the skin side up, so that we get the nicest looking piece of fish. And if we roll that up like so, that's called a paupiette. Okay, so these are French terms. If we get the fillet and we maybe put a stuffing in there and we fold it like so, so if you imagine there's a stuffing in between each layer there, or you could just simply poach it like that, that is known as a delice. Okay, so that's a folded fillet. And the other thing that we could do is if we take a fillet and we cut it into slices. Now, this is fairly thin. If it was a wide fillet, we might be able to cut it across, but as it's fairly thin, we're going to have to cut it on a diagonal to get strips of fish. Now, strips of fish like this can be battered and fried, and these are called goujons. Okay, so we have goujons, paupiette, and delice, as well as the fillet itself. And because they're not for immediate use, we're going to pop them back into the fridge. So it's important that we know what we're doing. And we can wrap this up, ready for storage. And I've got a food label here. It's a lemon sole, today's date, 2nd of April, and this came in this morning, so I'd like to use this ideally today, but definitely within the next day or two. So I'm going to put the 4th of April as a maximum date that it can be used by, who it's been prepared by, and my manager's details. So I'll take that and we can label that onto the fish, and that's now ready for storage. So there you have it, the preparation of a flatfish, the various cuts, what we can do with some of the side bits and the bones, and the wastage.